Did it, the books, the bit it, the books, the did it, the books, books.
All right, welcome back to I'll Read It Eventually. As the title of this video suggests, yes, in fact, all the books I'm about to show you were free. Free. And that should help you understand my problem. Uh, how do I have as many books as I do? Yeah, part of it's buying. Part of it is that when you like books as much as I do, you know the places you can find them for very little amount of money, and the places you can find them for nothing. And often those places are just chock full of really good stuff. So, um, that plus, birthdays and holidays and things like that. So, um, yeah, it piles up. Yeah, I attract them like magnets. And most of the time, well, some of the time, doesn't even require money. So, um, these books came from a variety of places. My brothers and I have a yearly holiday where we celebrate being brothers, and so one of those is from that. Um, the seminary that I attend has a free bookshelf in its library, and several of them are from that. I got a book for free from some friends, and then or no, I guess these are from the seminary library as well. So, just all kinds of places. Again, when people know that you like books, one of the things they will do is be like, "Hey, do you want this? I was going to get rid of it," um, or "We don't know what to do with this. Do you want it?" And that's kind of what happened here. So, in no particular order, here are some books that I've picked up recently, um, which contribute to my continuing challenge to read all my books. Um, these three are all modern library classic hardback editions. I really like the way these books look, and that's part of the draw. I'm not a huge books as aesthetic things kind of person, but I do like nice looking books. But as you'll see in a later video, I also will pick up books that are in horrible condition if it's a book that I want to read. So these three books, the first one is called Penguin Island. I don't know if that's going to be readable by you. Penguin Island by Anatole, France. This is a novel about, um, I guess it's kind of a dystopia. Um, there's a guy who goes to Antarctica to evangelize the penguins, and he baptizes them, and then they create a society. That sounds ridiculous even saying it, but they create a society, and then what has happened among human societies happens among the penguins, and so this is that book. I'm really not sure what to expect from this one. I've never heard of this book before, um, but just in reading a page or two, it seems like it's going to be a pretty funny social commentary, um, in addition to being about birds, which I love. So, Penguin Island by Anatole France. I'm looking forward to that. This is really early modern library edition. This is from 1909. 1909. So, and I have looked at these a couple times just to make sure they are as old as I think they are. Um, oh, sorry. No, wait. This is from 1933. The original copyright's 1909. So still old, but not as old as I thought. But heck of a book to start with. Again, free. The next one is actually two books in one binding, and that is Pere, Goriot, and Eugenie Grandet by Honore de Balzac. Um, and the first one, Pere Goriot, is a book I've heard of. Have not, obviously, have not read. Eugenie Grandet, I've never heard of, but I've heard of Balzac. And so, again, when I saw this, these are expensive. Well, for books, they're expensive. And so when I saw it for nothing, it was hard for me to say no to. Um, yeah, so I didn't. Um, but I heard of it. I know Honore de Balzac, so I was like, yeah, it's probably worth it, and it's a modern library classics, and so at the very least, it's going to end up with someone who cares about that sort of thing. The last one I had not heard of at all. It's called The Romance of Leonardo da Vinci by Dmitri Merejkowski. Try hitting that 10 times fast. It is a fictionalized account of the life of Leonardo da Vinci. Um, it's apparently part of a trilogy. I'm trying to remember what the trilogy is called right now. Obviously, given the guy's name, it was originally written in Russian, so it is one of those big Russian novels. Um, but it's part of a trilogy um, that I think one of them is about St. Paul, maybe. Um, and then the second one, I think this is the second one about Leonardo da Vinci. And then the third one, it escapes me who it's by, but it is apparently part of a trilogy and was actually a fairly influential book. Again, I've never heard of Dmitri Merejkowski, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. Apparently, parts of this book were inspirations for the Da Vinci Code. If you're familiar with the Da Vinci Code, from what I understand, the Romance of Leonardo da Vinci depicts um, his inner life, and in particular, a struggle that he has between paganism and Christianity, and that comes out in his work. So that's basically that's what I understand the book to be about, is that struggle internally, and what that ultimately produces, both artistically and then of course for him personally. So think those look really good. Oh, and then Pere Goriot is about the decadence of French society after the French Revolution. And basically, I think just the way in which the French Revolution completely failed to produce the society that it was attempting to produce, and instead produced one that was obsessed with class and obsessed with money, um, which is the opposite of what they were setting out to do. Um, yeah, so there's that. The next one is one that my oldest brother got me. It's a book that I have wanted for a little while, by an author that I like a lot. You can actually see right over this shoulder, those two books right there, the blue and the green one, are by Paul Kingsnorth. This is Against the Machine on the Unmaking of Humanity. Kingsnorth is a really interesting writer. He used to be a cultural liberal. He used to be a hardcore environmental activist, and he used to be a Wiccan. So he practiced like witchcraft with a coven, and he actually talks about that. I guess I have. Well, it's not really a book, but there's an article that he wrote in First Things a long time ago, um, called "The Cross and the Machine." I think is what it is. Yeah, I think that's what it is. Which is effectively his conversion story. And he, was very much part of one aspect of modern Western culture, and then both through a political awakening and a spiritual awakening, just did a complete 180. So, well, not a complete, but almost a complete 180. So he's walked away from modern environmental activism, but not environmentalism itself. He's walked away from Wicca, and is now, I think he's Eastern Orthodox. He's written about it. He's Orthodox. I know that. He's in Orthodoxy. I just don't know what part of Eastern Orthodoxy he's part of. Um, but he's Orthodox. Um, and then he is now. It's weird because he's not really a right wing guy. I mean, he cares about. He calls them the four P's, which are place, prayer, past, and past and I'm not going to be able to remember it, but essentially he talks about how in this book in particular he talks about how Western culture is essentially like acid for um, social bonds and the things that actually cause a civilization to build and be stable. And so that ultimately the society we've created in the West now, he argues, is one that is kind of eating itself alive. And that if people want to survive as groups, not individuals, but as groups, if they want to preserve what they think are the good aspects of Western culture, then he says people have to start caring about where they live. They have to start caring about where they've come from, who they are, who their people were. And then prayer for him is not necessarily Christianity for everyone. He uses that term to mean the religious beliefs which ground your particular history. And so I don't know if he would tell a person from the Indian subcontinent, like, hey, you should be a Hindu. But I think he would tell them, hey, you need to understand that that's where you and your people have come from. And Western culture is going to try and dissolve that and eat that and shove it into this technical machine that's going to spit it out on the other side, bereft of all the things that make it good. So don't let that happen, right? Remember what Hinduism has produced in the subcontinent, and if you're going to become a Christian, which I think he would suggest, don't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think is what he would say. So he's a really interesting writer because this is the kind of writer that I most appreciate from a conservative perspective. One who actually cares about the earth. I think that's one of the things that most attracts me to his work is that he very clearly in his writing um, demonstrates that although he's walked away from environmental activism, he has not walked away from environmentalism. And those two things are very much different and very much separate. You can care about the world and not be a modern environmental activist, right? He still very much cares about the environment, speaks on behalf of the environment, the world, but doesn't go around stabbing 400-year-old paintings or covering them with oil or chicken's blood, because that doesn't do anything. So, so that's his book about how to resist the problems of modern technical society and all that sort of stuff. The machine is his term for that. So, Paul Kingsnorth, really looking forward to reading that. I guess I'll do those two together since they came from the same place. This is a book I picked up from some friends. They literally had it laid on a table, labeled as "We're not really sure what to do with this." They work for an organization that has a library, and so they were kind of mulling, what do we do with this? And what this is it's called The Mythmakers, The Remarkable Fellowship of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien by John Hendrix. And it is a graphic novel about their life stories and friendship and how that created the worlds of Narnia and Middle Earth. So it's just again, it was labeled as we don't really know what to do with this. Yeah, and I get it. I completely understand that. But to me, this looks fascinating. Now, I might start reading it and decide, you know what, this isn't for me. But there are huge portions of it which are not written in like comic book style. There's a lot that is, or graphic novel style. But there's also almost entire pages of prose in here. So it's a graphic novel, but only in a very specific kind of sense. In that, I would say about 3/4 of the pages are, well, about half of the pages are all pictures with some text. And then there are some pictures that have regular prose text. And then there are some pages that are basically all text, with maybe one small illustration or something. So it's a really weird format for a book. I've never seen a book quite in this format before. But obviously it's really well illustrated. I mean, it looks beautiful. So, Yeah, and it's brand spanking new. Um, just brand spanking new. So, um, looks great, and obviously, I love both Narnia and Middle Earth. You can't see those books right now, but they're behind my head, which is why you can't see them because giant head. So the Mythmakers. Excited about that one. The next two, I guess actually, I started with books I got from the seminary bookshelf, and I'm ending with books I got from the seminary bookshelf. The first one I got entirely on the basis of the person that wrote it, which is John Stott. This is Between Two Worlds: The Art of Preaching in the 20th Century. There's John Stott. That's not what he looks like now. I believe he's passed away. John Stott is an Anglican priest, and pretty well known author in evangelical circles. Um, he preached, I'm forgetting where now. Let's see if it says in the back. Okay, well, at the time this was published, which was a while ago, he was the director of the London Institute for Contemporary Christianity. Stott's a guy who, um, in the true spirit of Anglicanism, if you don't know, he attempts to draw the best from all places. He wants to make Christianity understandable and meaningful to a modern audience, but doesn't want to do that by throwing out all the things that modern people don't understand. Right, so he's very much committed to the truth and historicity of Scripture, but he's also okay with trying to figure out what exactly it is that means. So, for instance, he wrote I think it's a journal article. I don't think it's a whole book, but he wrote an extensive scholarly argument about ways in which you could interpret the book of Genesis to line up with theories relating to the origins of humanity that come exclusively from modern science. So um, basically, his work asks the question: was Adam the only person, or were Adam and Eve the only people when the events of Genesis 2 through 4 take place? Um, or were there other human beings who weren't human persons, is basically what he says. So he argues that it might be the case that what happened is that Adam and Eve were ensouled. So God made them into not just human beings, but also human persons. And so they had a rational soul, whereas there were other human beings, right? What I think scientifically would be called hominids. There were other hominids, but they weren't ensouled beings. And so he says effectively, well, it could be the case if we're going to line the revealed scriptures with modern science. One of the ways you could do that is to say, well, there were only two human persons, right? Adam and Eve. There were lots of human beings, right? And that effectively what God did is ensoul two of them. And then as a result of their continuing to have children and multiply, other people become ensouled effectively. Um, it's not a perfect solution because that asks the question: so did they have children in the first generation or two? Did their kids have children with hominids who weren't truly human? And what does that mean about us? Did other people outside the Garden of Eden become ensouled when Adam and Eve got kicked out of it? Um, there's a lot of questions, but again, that's kind of what his thing is how do we take what we as Christians believe to be true because of what's revealed in the scriptures, on the basis of what Stott would say is the inarguable conclusion that the Gospels tell you Jesus rose from the dead. And if that's true, what does that mean about the rest of Scripture, and what does the rest of Scripture mean about our lives? So he's a really interesting guy to read. This book I don't think gets into something as wild and wacky as what about Genesis 1 through 4. I think it's just about how to preach and do it well in the 20th century. But I think there'll be something in here for the 21st century as well. So he was a great preacher. I've actually watched some of his preaching. So um, interested to get into this book. It may be the case, if you've watched enough of my videos, you know that I actually got rid of a book by Tim Keller about preaching. It may be the case that this one suffers the same fate. I do have a book about preaching that I liked. Um, Tim Keller's book just wasn't it. I don't know. The last one is kind of a weird one um, because it requires, and it's ironic that there's a piece of classic art on the front of this. It's a work which requires, if I read the whole thing, it's going to require me to sort of separate the art from the artist, as it were, or the thoughts from the thinker. It's probably a better way of putting it. It's Deliver Us from Evil by Ravi Zacharias. The subtitle is Restoring the Soul in a Disintegrating Culture. So it talks about some of the things that I think Paul Kingsnorth talks about in his book. Um, the issue is that Ravi Zacharias, this book is a couple decades old, I think. Let's see. Yeah, this was published in 1996. I was 3 years old when this came out. Um, that's wild. At that point in time, Ravi Zacharias was an up and coming Christian apologist. He started a ministry, a global ministry called Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. I think it's international. It's got to have been. Yeah. And he spoke around the world. Really convincing speaker, really well thought argumentation. I mean, he had debates with some of the big names, especially among the new atheists. I think he debated Richard Dawkins and maybe Christopher Hitchens as well. I don't remember exactly, but he was somebody who confronted the issues that, were roiling American Christianity and Western Christianity, and really, I guess, global Christianity around the turn of the 21st century. Um, and I remember listening to my high school senior economics teacher, economics and government teacher, a guy I really respected then, think is great now, actually go to church with now, weirdly enough. Um, his wife teaches my daughter's Sunday school class. Um, but I remember him telling us as students that one of the things that brought him to faith was listening to cassette tapes of Ravi Zacharias talking about Christianity. So he's a really winsome speaker, a really effective speaker, and people have come to faith as a result of his work. The problem is that in the last several years, came out that he was not entirely above board in his relationships with some of the people that he worked for. I don't remember exactly what the allegations were, um, but they were abusive and not like verbally abusive. Um, so he was shown to be a little bit, well, quite a bit two-faced. I think some young men came forward and accused him of some things. And so his ministry, I think, basically just imploded. And there was a lot of questions about, well, what did he know and when? That sort of thing. And that's awful, right? I mean, I hate that. I actually noticed there's some books in the library at the school where I work who are by another ministry figure who, in the last couple of years, came out that he was had a long term affair with a woman while he worked at a Christian ministry and preached the gospel and wrote books and authored articles and all this stuff. Um, and I have no doubt at some point worked on things which said, what is the Christian view regarding marriage? And I'm sure that he wrote down things that I would say, oh yeah, that's true. Absolutely. I affirm that. But then he himself was not living up to that. And that is, Zacharias is the same way. I'm sure that he spoke about the Christian sexual ethic at the same time that he was actively transgressing it and knew when he said the things he said, hey, I'm not actually living up to that. I'm actively working against that. And so as Christians, we recognize that's going to happen a lot. All humans are sinners. It's going to be unavoidable. You're going to have people who stand up and say A is true or A is good, and then later it's going to come out that while they said that, they were doing B. And we as Christians have to be willing to say, you know what, that person did things which were wrong. The things that they said regarding that were still correct, right? Um, we don't put our faith in other human beings. That is, I think, one of the things which makes Christianity unique among world belief systems, is that the only man that we would put our faith in is a man that we actively and explicitly say was not simply a man and was not fallible in the way that we are fallible. Um, and so I'd be interested to see what Ravi Zacharias had to say about the culture that I grew up in, what his solutions to it were. Um, but yeah, I feel like when I read that one, I may sort of decide, you know what, I I'm just gonna find somebody else who talks about this. I don't know. Also, weirdly, the foreword to this book is by Frank Peretti. Um, and if you are a Christian of a certain age, then Frank Peretti is either somebody you're like, I love that guy's writing, or he's somebody that you're like, oh, okay, cool, Frank Peretti. I'm not a big Frank Peretti fan, so we'll see. Maybe I won't get past the foreword. Yeah. So, all that said, because I have now picked up these free books, that puts me, in terms of shopping this shelf, that puts me at 726 physical books to read. So, um, did jump back up a couple, unfortunately, and there will be another video soon in which it will jump back up another couple, unfortunately. But also, fortunately, it's good to have good things to read. Like, I want them to, go away over time, but it's good to have good things to read. So, I now have several more good things to read, and you'll probably be hearing about some of them not very long from now. So, we'll see you in the next one.